from California with a former member of this team. He's decided to rejoin us here for today. None other than Roy Lucier. How are you, Roy?
I'm doing great, Rick. How about yourself?
Oh, I can't be happier, buddy. Having a good time. The NWA Continental Champion, the Morning Star, Will Huckabee, is joining us as well. Will, how are you, brother man?
Man, I'm doing really, really good. I was getting late starting today, but I wouldn't miss this for anything in the world, man.
Awesome. You know, without further ado, like I said, the Undisputed Wrestling Show brought to you by the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Check it out, www.AngryMarks.com, the best in pro wrestling and MMA interviews and discussions also, and news as well. And also check out all of our former shows, www.UndisputedWrestlingShow.weebly.com. Without further ado, you may think of him as marvelous. You may even think he's wild. Me, I just will always remember him as a bad man. Johnny B. Bad. Marc Mero is joining us this afternoon. Mr. Mero, how are you, sir?
Rick, Roy, Will, good talking to you guys. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Oh, it's an incredible honor. Like I said, this is a special edition. We normally do this on Tuesday evening, but getting the opportunity to be able to talk to you warrants a special show, so I'm glad you were able to hook up with us today. For those who are unaware, Mr. Mero has an illustrious sports career in his younger days, I guess we'll say. Mark, I've known all about your boxing history, but I didn't know that you were so big into hockey. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing with hockey. You lived in New York for a while. What do you still watch? Do you have a favorite team? Give us the rundown, Mark.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So, I stayed in Buffalo until I was 13, but I started my hockey career there. And I loved hockey. That was my first love was hockey. So I was a huge Sabres fan. And but I eventually made it to junior hockey. I played on the Syracuse Stars, and did real well at hockey. Like I said, it was my first love in sports was hockey, and because I ended up in the penalty box quite a bit, I would go to the boxing gym off season, and eventually got into boxing pretty heavily and became a 4-time New York State boxing champion. I won the Golden Gloves. I won the gold medal in the Empire State Games. And eventually made my way to the USA boxing team, where I was in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the U.S. Olympic Training Center.
You know, the crazy thing is I'm a huge Chicago Blackhawks fan. I do write for a professional hockey website as well, but I'm also have a great boxing background, where my father was a Golden Gloves champion in the city of Indianapolis, which is where we're at, and refereed some guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not, Mark. Marvin Johnson.
Sure, light heavyweight champion.
Cassius Clay.
I think I did hear of him once or twice.
Yeah, he refereed them when they were still in youth boxing. So I've grown up in the boxing realm as well. So it's really cool, following your story and what you've done. I guess my big question was, when the 90s started rolling around, Mark, and you started seeing, people like Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock starting to become bigger in the MMA scene, did that ever cross your mind to ever get involved with that?
No, that came more in I think that was more like the mid-90s. But when I first got into professional, when I first got into wrestling, it was, I went to school in 1990 and I signed my first contract in 1991 with WCW. But MMA was not real. I didn't really even know anything really about MMA back then, And then, of course, when we first had the first Ultimate Fighting champ, where Hoist Gracie dominated. It was really interesting, but you got to remember something. That is a young man's sport. I didn't even start wrestling until I was 31 years old. So even in the mid 90s, now I'm into my mid 30s, and of course into my late 30s when it was really starting to pick up. So I really never had the interest, obviously, of getting into any type of MMA, but I really enjoy watching it. I watch the pay-per-views all the time.
Now, the injuries took its toll on your boxing career, so what prompted you to join the wacky world of wrestling? Had you always been a fan, Mark, or is it something somebody suggested to you, or how did you get involved?
the truth is, my brother and I would watch wrestling when we were younger. In Buffalo, we went to it was called the Peace Bridge Exhibition Center and the Buffalo War Memorial, where my dad would take us to watch wrestling every once in a while, and we loved it as kids. But what happened was when I was 30 years old, I had a bunch of my friends over my apartment, and my buddy had the remote control. He was like flipping through the TV channels, and he landed on professional wrestling. And I said this, I'm looking at the TV. It was like I got this overwhelming feeling. I go, guys, I can do that. And my buddies busted out laughing. They were saying how big the guys were, how they would just pick me up and throw me out of the ring. And I said, no, I can do that. My other friend goes, Mark, you're 30 years old. What do you do, start a pro career now? I said, yes. And then, so what I did was I found out where there was a wrestling school. Some of the guys that worked out at the gym I was working out at were professional wrestlers, the enhancement guys. And so they took me to Boris Malenko's school, which was in Tampa, Florida. It was about 60 miles from where I lived. And we would drive there on weekends or sometimes after work. And, it was crazy. 1 year later, at 31 years old, I signed my first contract with WCW.
And how did they get a hold of you, Mark? Is it something they saw, or did somebody,
Well, what happened was,
how did that work out?
Well, what happened was, like I said, the friends of mine that were in professional wrestling, they were enhancement guys, and they would drive from Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, and they would do enhancement matches and get paid like $150. So they asked me to come along with them. They said, you never know, they might choose you. And of course, I drove down to Atlanta, about an 8-hour drive. And, of course, they saw me. They chose me to be in a tag team match. Me and another wrestler wrestled against World Tag Team Champions Doom, Butch Reed and Ron Simmons.
Right.
And they beat the tar out of us. And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, this stuff was fake. This hurts. But anyways, make a long story short, Dusty Rhodes was watching me on the monitor. And after the match, he approached me and he said, hey, kid, anybody ever tell you look like Little Richard? I didn't know who he was talking about, so I said, who's Little Richard? And he said, wop-bop-a-loo-bop-boo. And I said, I realized who he was talking about then. I said, no one ever said that. He goes, I think I got a gimmick for you. And that's how my career started. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be wearing a feather boa and eyeliner and lipstick, brother. But you know what? When they showed me the contract I was about to sign, I was the happiest guy on the planet.
So what did you think when he was laying this all out for you? Because I've heard a long time that Dusty came up with this idea. And he laid out this whole Little Richard gimmick thing for you. I mean, what was going through the mind of Marc Mero at the time, knowing this is what you're going to be doing to get started in a big company?
It's kind of funny because my dad, who was Jewish and from Brooklyn, New York, and my dad worked my corner for boxing, so my dad often saw me, saw my boxing matches, that he's got a pretty tough son, And I remember that I was at the CNN Center, and my father was living in Buffalo, New York, and there's a couple of things you don't do with Jewish people, okay? I can say this because I was brought up Jewish, but you know the old saying, you don't spit in the wind, you don't tug on Superman's cape. Well, the other thing you don't do is call a Jew collect on the phone, okay? And this is back when they had, remember the payphones in the 90s where you had to say, like you call, collect, call, and the operator would get on, and then she would tell the other party, this is a collect call from, and then you'd say your name, Mm-hmm. And then the person could, accept it or deny it. Well, my father would never accept a collect call. So when they said, would you like to accept a collect call from, I go, Dad, don't hang up. This is important. So my dad's like, what? And I said, Dad, you're not going to believe this. I'm at the CNN Center, and I just signed a big contract with WCW Wrestling. And my dad, from Brooklyn, New York, Mark, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were going to make it, And he goes, what do they got you doing? I go, well, Dad, they got me doing this Little Richard gimmick. Yeah. He goes, Little Richard? Isn't that fag Schwarzer? And I go, Dad, they're paying me almost $100,000 a year. And he goes, Mark, I always liked that little Richard. And next thing you know, my dad obviously, laughed it off with his friends, and it was quite the character, quite the. You remember something? I didn't know how to really wrestle at the time. I was so green, and not that I got any better, but at the time I really didn't. I'm wrestling some of the veterans of the sport. I remember wrestling guys like I was learning from Ricky Morton, and guys that have been in the business for a long time, that were, putting me over and trying to teach me in the ring and help me listen and conduct a match. Remember, I'm a heel. I'm a bad guy, and I'm not even know how to call a match. So it was really difficult at first. And then, obviously going to work on my skills when they had the power plant back then. Go down a lot with Diamond Dallas Page and remember Scotty Flamingo, or became Raven. Guys like that helped me out. Terry
Sergeant
Taylor.
Buddy Lee Parker was there too, right?
Yeah, Buddy Lee. Oh, he was great too. And Jody Hamilton. I know there's some people I'm forgetting, but there were some really wonderful people that really spent the time down at that power plant that helped me become a better wrestler and learn. And then I eventually got to the point where I was one of the most improved wrestlers in the business.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We are talking to Johnny B. Bad, Marc Mero, on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. And I'm going to kick it on over to the NWA Continental Champion himself, the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. Will, what do you got for Mr. Mero?
First of all, I say once again, thank you, Mr. Mero, for being up here. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Will. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, man. I'm having a great time.
Now, my first question, how hard was it to learn? Did you put your own makeup on, or did somebody else do it for you?
Oh, Will, we're going to get along just fine. No, Will, actually, that's a great question, but it was, Terry Reynolds, who eventually, Terry Boatwright at the time, eventually married Dustin. She was the makeup artist for WCW for like Tony Schiavone when they went on air and stuff, So Dusty used her to put on my makeup. He'd say, go put some color on this kid, So she would do my makeup, and and she got a little carried away sometimes, I have to admit.
Coming from the world of boxing to get to professional wrestling, you've always said how you thought the entire sport was fake, and then you realized once you got in the ring with Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, these guys were really hitting each other. But besides that, what other misconceptions about wrestling did you have that proved to be false once you got into the wrestling business?
Another great question, Will. I was a boxer. I played football for Coach George O'Leary. I played hockey, some of the rougher sports out there, and I have never found anything as physically demanding as professional wrestling. Your body just takes such abuse. People that say whatever they want, wrestling's fake. Well, let me tell you something. Gravity is real, okay? If someone puts you over their head and throws you on your back, I'm telling you something, your body has to really adjust to that fall over and over and over again. When you start doing upwards of 250 cities a year and your body never gets a rest, injuries come into play quite a bit, but it is really physically demanding because you are often wrestling hurt.
Oh, yeah, I definitely know that. I'm banged up right now. Your first match with Teddy Long, I know the backstory about him starting off in the business, cleaning up the studios and then going to run errands for guys. By that time, he had stopped being a referee. How was it running up and down the roads with Teddy Long?
Oh, my gosh. So we had a lot of fun. Teddy was a funny guy. And, we go, how we would do our bantering back and forth in the ring. He'd say, "Oh, hush, Johnny." I'd say, "Oh, you hush, Teddy." You're so ugly and I'm so pretty. We have just so much fun, laughing. We'd come up with lines in the car on the way to the shows and stuff like that. And he was a great guy. I wish they would have kept us together a little longer because we were just starting to really connect, and they kind of took us apart fairly soon.
You ever had, while you was working at WCW, you ever have any fans and stuff who thought your gimmick was a little too real and actually thought that you was more Little Richard than Marc Mero. Actually tried to swing at you, after the show.
I sure hope so, because that means I guess I played my part real good, But there's always going to be people saying whatever they want to say. But to me, it was an acting job, and I did the best I could at it. I never, when they first told me about this gimmick, Dusty Rhodes was very inspirational in showing me how to walk, talk, and act like the character that he saw in his mind. And I eventually got it down pretty good where he was really happy with it and would just laugh. And, every time he saw me, he'd say nothing but, "Oh, hush, Johnny," so we had a great time. And, it was a fun character because that's what it was, a character.
Before we turn it over to Roy Lucier, Mark, real quick, what was it like when you finally got to meet Little Richard at WCW?
I never actually got to meet him, but No, we never met each other. There's a lot of pictures that it looks like we were together, but we never met each other. They actually have a picture of him. It's really kind of funny. He was doing a concert, and I think it was in New York City. He was doing a concert, and he pulled out a poster of Johnny B. Bad, and he said something to the effect. They said, "This man says he's so pretty, he's ugly," and he rips up the poster, and it was just kind of comical, But I never did get the opportunity to meet him. It would have been kind of pretty cool if I did.
I guess my memory must be poor. Did Little Richard, Roy, you may have to help me with this, did Little Richard make an appearance at a WCW pay-per-view? And if so, was it after you were gone?
It had to be after I'd gone because obviously it would have been a no-brainer to put us together, but I never physically met him in person. It had to be after I had left WCW.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to Johnny B. Bad, Marc Mero, and we're going to turn it over to my buddy, Roy Lucier. Roy, what you got for Marc Mero?
First of all, Mr. Mero, in today's society, we always read a lot of negative stories every day. We read about bad things going on in the world. And what's heartwarming is a couple weeks ago, blasted on the front page of Yahoo, AOL, Facebook, everywhere, was these positive stories about what you do when you go around the country and the little speeches that you give and the motivation that you provide to people. And first of all, thank you so much for that. That really, really was great to see, especially with all the negative stories you read about today. That was heartwarming and very touching, and I just wanted to thank you personally for that.
Roy, I really appreciate that. There's no greater joy in my life than giving or helping another person. And I've now spoken well over 1,000 schools around the country. Even went to Russia and spoke at schools over there. And we were just seeing the sad part is we've seen such a culture of kids that are going through such adversity, kids that are self-harming or having suicidal thoughts, and that breaks my heart. So I wanted to put together a program that really gave kids the opportunity to reach out or to talk to someone or to empower them to dream big, think big, and realize how special and gifted and talented that they are, and not to be defined by other people's opinions. And the program really took off, and now we are, we're on pace to do well over 200 events this year.
Well, Roy, let's save this for the end because we're going to go into great depth about Champion of Choices with Mark. Let's pick it up at WCW and keep moving our way to WWE, Roy, and then we'll get with Mark with Champion of Choices here in a little bit.
I think Roy was just trying to save me from the WWE.
I think he was, but we got to cross that bridge. We have to cross that bridge. Mark, you know that.
No, guys, I got to tell you something. Going from WCW to WWE was a dream come true. It was like in professional wrestling, it's like the dance was WWE, was WrestleMania. And I don't think there's a wrestler out there who can't say that was the pinnacle of professional wrestling is WrestleMania. And you really didn't go to the dance unless you went to WrestleMania. And I had the opportunity to go to the WWE to be a part of, obviously, WrestleMania. But, the hard part about that was obviously losing the Johnny B. Bad character and having the character called Wild Man Marc Mero, which was very difficult because Johnny B. Bad was such a character, and now it's like, what was a wild man? Am I from a jungle? Was I crazy? What was this character? And I never really, and not anybody's fault but my own. I didn't really I couldn't identify with it or feel that like I did, or have as much fun with it as I did with the Johnny B. Bad character. And I don't think it really connected the way I was really hoping I would have connected with the fans and the WWE at the time.
Before the TV taping started in San Bernardino, Jake Roberts came out and gave this little speech, and he was talking about how he saw this nasty freak in the back, and he wasn't referring to Goldust, and he started talking about how he saw Mankind in the back. And then, if I remember Jake Roberts' speech correctly, and this was before the TV they started on camera, he came out and he says, I saw this nasty freak in the back that would make all of you sick, and no, I'm not talking about Goldust. And that was when he introduced Mankind to the crowd. And then I remember that you came out before the TV tapings, so the fans, you were established in the fans' eyes as someone to cheer for. And that was my first memory of you in WWE. Do you remember anything about that TV taping at all?
The only thing I remember I wrestled Isaac Yankem, who later became Kane. That was my first match with WWE was against him on a TV taping, and he was such a good hand. I mean, the guy was just a really good guy to work with, and obviously he knew he was putting me over, so he did my debut. He did all the things I wanted to do in the match, but I can't really remember. I didn't even know that. Looking back, I guess I did make the same debut as Mankind. Did he make a debut that day also?
Yeah, you and him debuted at San Bernardino at the Orange Pavilion or whatever it was. It was kind of like the where they do the state fair every year. It was the day after WrestleMania 12.
You got a great memory. That was almost 20 years ago,
Mark, you never mess with Roy's wrestling memory, trust me.
Yeah, well, I'm not arguing with him. He's absolutely right then. But, I do remember because obviously my big debut was against Isaac Yankem. And so I remember that. But I remember, because it was me, Stone Cold, and Mankind all went over around the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when you debuted in WCW, was that your first pro match, the match against Butch Reed and Ron Simmons?
No. I had a couple matches little independent shows in Venice, Florida with Rick Ryder and Bob Cook. And then I had a couple. Yeah, and then I had I've done
radio with him in the past. Bob's a great guy. What was your gimmick then, or did you have one, or were you still Marc Mero?
Oh, my gosh. I was called Monster Man Marc Mero. So I had this crazy, kind of like an Ultimate Warrior. Like every kid in Independent would do, the first thing they want to be is like the Ultimate Warrior, And I wrestled Robbie Idol, my first ever professional wrestling match, who's actually a friend of mine on Facebook to this day, and what a great guy. But he was my first match I ever had. But when I went to WCW, it was only maybe my, maybe fourth or fifth match I've ever had in my life, And then all of a sudden they signed me to a contract, and now I'm so green and wrestling in front of these big audiences. So they made it real simple that I would, the old thing I used to have, that what they called the Tutti Frutti, which was a left hook knockout punch, And I kick your booty with my Tutti Frutti.
Did you suffer any, and I want to keep this as positive as possible, but I do want to ask you, did you suffer any backlash? Were there any of the other wrestlers that may have appeared to be jealous that, I guess you could say that you fast-tracked from the indies to the main so quickly when a lot of the other guys, may have been on the indie circuit?
Roy, I believe you have that in all industries, when someone is pushed above somebody else. And, wrestling's a funny business because your profile can be raised or lowered by someone's opinion. Not necessarily the best worker, the best character, the best gimmick, whatever. It's just somebody's opinion that says, I want him over this guy, I want him to win this belt or do this. So, for me, obviously, what am I going to do? Say, no, I don't want to win tonight?
Exactly.
Really, what are you going to do? You're a company man. We're all supposed to work within the guidelines of the company. But sure, there's guys that felt maybe, that they should have been pushed ahead of me, and maybe rightfully so, and not to say that they didn't deserve it more than I did, but that's not my fault. That's what the company wanted. I never went to them personally and said, "Hey, I want you to, make me the television champion."
I think. I want to go to next. Working at WCW, you went from using the left-handed, the Tutti Frutti, basically the left-hand hook, to using the moonsault. Which, in my opinion, no matter what Christopher Daniels says, your moonsault is probably the best moonsault in professional wrestling.
Now, are you talking about the shooting star press?
Yes, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. That was awful nice of him to say that. I seen so many guys that could do it that were just made it look like flawless. Now,
how hard was it for you to learn that move? Because that's a very difficult and dangerous move to do.
There's a very funny story behind that, because it's not like a movie you can just practice in the ring, because it's very dangerous, especially to land right. So I went to my daughter, who at the time I think she was around 8 or 9 years old, and she was in gymnastics. So I went with her to her gymnastic class. I remember these are all little girls, and I said to the gymnastic coach, I said, "Do you mind if I get on the pommel horse and just put a crash pad in front of it and practice flips?" And she said, no problem, So I get on the pommel horse. Now, you guys know that doing a shooting star press, you have to land on your hands and knees, so you land in a prone position, not like gymnastics where you land on your feet and put your hands up in the air, right? So here I am doing this flip off this pommel horse, and all these little girls are giggling because I'm landing on my stomach, and I'm like all excited that I'm getting this, And here's all these girls thinking I'm crazy, like, why isn't he landing on his feet, So I that's how I learned how to do it. And then it was SummerSlam in WWE was the first time I ever tried it. It was against Goldust. And before the match, I said to him, I said, "Dustin, I got this new move that I want to try today." And he goes, "Well, what is it?" And Dustin was always open about doing anything. He was just fun to work with. And I told him, I'll like Samoan drop you in front of the corner here. I'll go to the top rope and I'll do this flip, but I'm going to land on chest to chest. And he looks at me and goes, "What? Like, are you crazy?" And I said, "Just trust me on this one." And sure enough, he allowed me to do it. And it was the first time I ever did it live. Never practiced it on anybody. And I did it in SummerSlam. It was the first time I ever did it. And it came across really good. And then I never missed one after that.
What was the reaction when you got to it back at that first one?
To be honest with you, I don't think there was that much of a reaction. Guys, it wasn't one of those things where it was like that spectacular. I think it was the first time anybody ever did it in the WWE ring, but I don't really recall anybody really being over like, "Whoa, that was unbelievable,"
Wow.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show on the Angry Marks Podcast Network, and we have the great pleasure of speaking to Johnny B. Bad, Marc Mero. And Mark, I always ask, because I am a huge WCW fan. I loved the product. I always thought it was my cup of tea, I guess, for wrestling. But I always ask WCW alumni, and I know you weren't there at the very end, but what do you attribute the demise of WCW to be? Do you have any, thoughts or any inclinations of why you think WCW went out?
Well, I think it just, from my own opinion, and that's just what it is, an opinion. I really don't know all the ins and outs. I mean, you had some, leadership that changed a few times. They brought people in. They brought people back, very, very expensive contracts. And, if you're not drawing the kind of money to pay those contracts, it's going to hurt. And then, of course, the liability that goes along with that, and a lot of issues, and there's a lot of lawsuits, a lot of things going back and forth. And I think it just got to the point where, the upper echelon of Ted Turner's company just said, "Hey, this isn't worth it, man. Let's get rid of this. Let's sell it. Pennies on the dollar. We don't need this aggravation." And that's just an opinion. I just, there were some brilliant things that they did there to compete with the WWE at the time. Eric Bischoff did some amazing things. He had a lot of guts, to do some things that other people wouldn't even chance doing. And, he'll probably tell you himself, he probably looks back and could say where maybe he made some mistakes and would have done things a little differently. But you know, I owe that guy my first real big contract. He's the one that believed in me and gave me a great contract, and you know, eventually helped me become very wealthy in the business. And you know, I owe a lot to Eric. He was a really good guy. I got to know his kids when they were growing up and his family, and you know,
we're talking to Garrett tomorrow night, Mark.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I remember Garrett. I remember taking Garrett and his little sister to a Christmas party, and it was kind of strange because it was for homeless kids, and you know, any kid growing up, you know, in a predominantly white neighborhood, you know, your Santa Claus is normally a white guy. And I took him to a Christmas party, and there was a black Santa Claus. I think it might have traumatized Garrett. I don't know. But anyways, just teasing. He's a great kid.
We'll have to ask him about that tomorrow night if he has memories.
No, he probably doesn't even remember. He was so young.